some scouting, and Liam said, I hate to tell you this, Katie, I already have a featured match. And what was it about this match? I think people might already know a little bit why, but what made you pick this?
I mean, I love Amber Sapphire. I love Amber Sapphire. I love Amber Sapphire. It's a color combo that I always wanted to work, but you always thought it would present itself in kind of a princess build early on, because that's where a lot of the princess synergies are built. But this deck is not. In the current meta, people have had some success with it, and basically what you're doing is you're doing Blurple, but slightly different. You're doing Blurple by ramping, sometimes double ramping with the Cinderella, so more of a blue seal type trick, trying to get in the end game. But then you bring in, for Amber, you bring in the board wipe, the Raging Storm, and then you bring in Horseman Strikes, which gives you an edge in the mid game against Amethyst. And then you also bring in, usually, not often, or always, but usually a really fun card that I love. It's the Black Cauldron, which when it was revealed, everybody said, this card is fine. It's not going to be meta relevant. It turns out it is kind of meta relevant because it does some work in this deck, and we'll talk about why later on. Let's take a look at what's going on the board, though, right now, because we've got action already. Double ramp over there on Eric's side of the board, and on the other side, it looks like the Amethyst Steel deck is a little rough, a little early for that dock to be played.
Yeah, I mean, that dock is something, I call it dock no dock, and that means that you dock with no trigger, because it isn't optional. When you play this, you may discard your hand to draw 2 cards. You certainly don't have to, and you certainly don't want to if you still have cards in your hand. So Trevor's in a bit of a situation right now, because dock is not known for doing much other than his really cool effect. Cheshire Cat is good, but Cheshire Cat needs some bodies to challenge into. Really, this story, Eric is playing a control deck. So ultimately, Trever has this magical window that not many players get a chance of, where Eric is doing nothing except for this, which is Spooky Sight. I'm scared, Liam. We haven't seen a lot of Spooky Sight. So this card is one that is a conditional board wipe. We talk about board wipes, and when we say board wipes, 99% of the time, we're not talking about a real board wipe. We're talking about like kind of a board wipe. And this is kind of a board wipe. Put all characters with 3 costs unless they're in their hand into the player's ink will face down and exerted. So it's a gift in the sense that Trever just got 3 ink, but he lost 3 turns worth of progress.
Yeah, a lot of tempo gone, and this deck, these Amethyst Steel decks rely on some character synergies. You got that cat out there, you want to see damage, you're setting up a cat to do some damage shenanigans. You want to have that fuel strength of Raging Fire for later, and losing your board is particularly impactful in this deck. Trever needs to find card draw, but this'll help do it. Genie into another card, but again, that dock not at the right time. Like it's
a doctor without his medical license.
Yeah, that's right. He's there.
He didn't pass his boards, and he's just a body, and it's a 1/3 body, so not even exactly a great one. So Trevor's in this game, but as we know in control decks, there's this moment where you're like, it's not that bad. But then things start getting bad. And this is that moment as we add a board wipe followed by who is this blue menace of society here?
Hades Infernal Schemer, all the way back from set 1, reprinted and fabled. And it's been one of the cards that makes Blurple such a powerful deck in this meta. And also, again, this deck, which is really doing Blurple just slightly differently. We see also in Eric's hand one of the reasons why you play Amber instead of that Amethyst color pair, and that is for the board wipe of Raging Storm. Eric has it. And so one of the things he's trying to do is control the board a little bit at a time, build up his board state, find his Black Cauldron, set things up, and then at the right moment when Trever thinks he has things in hand, he's established a bit of a board state. He's gone a little bit wide. You drop this Raging Storm, reset everything, and it changes everything. Now, I will talk about Black Cauldron at this point because it pairs well with that Raging Storm. One of the things that this deck does is where Blurple tries to build up a resource advantage in its hand and then use all of its powerful removal tools to just control things and eventually dump a bunch of stuff on the board. The Raging Storm changes this a little bit because what it means is that Eric is banishing everything, clearing everything, and then needs to find a way to gain that edge in the late game. And the way you do that sometimes is with Black Cauldron. And a Black Cauldron allows you to do one of 2 things. Either A, you can pull back cards with powerful interplay abilities like Hades and use them over and over and over again. So what's worth them being Hades once, it's being Hades like 7 times because the Hades keeps coming back from the discard pile. Or 2, Black Cauldron, if you get it in play early enough, allows you to build up numerous cards under it. So you can put 2, 3, 4, 5 characters there. And these Amber Sapphire decks build up a huge inkwell before too long, using cards like, double ramping like Eric has already done, using cards like Cinderella to build up your inkwell. And then you can play, out of the Black Cauldron, a zombie army of 3 or 4 characters all at the same time to rebuild after a Raging Storm. And we see here this scenario kind of setting up, Katie, where Trever is feeling a little bit comfortable. Some of his powerful stuff has been banished, but he's starting to build up a wider board. He's got 3 characters. Next turn we'll see 4, but that Raging Storm is lurking.
Raging Storm, Raging Storm. I think it that way because it's kind of like a be prepared. And the Black Cauldron, like you mentioned, it's fascinating. But if you guys looked at it, it was a 3-cost uningable. You have to pay to put cards under there. You have to pay to get cards under it. You have to pay to play those cards. So it is something where you need the time. And so I think it's where people kind of struggle is how many do you put in your deck? Because not every matchup will you have time. For example, Trever was down, but he's not out. That's one of the things that can be so frustrating is, like you said, a zombie army. Sometimes it feels like you have a zombie army with Trevor's deck because Amethyst Steel can go wide over and over again. Now, we've seen some dock be used not to the best ability. They weren't able to get cards. So, but there's a few other ways to get cards. So all that to say, Eric needs time, and Trever is saying, I'm not going to give you the time to relax. So it's interesting. It's an interesting matchup, but I do think we saw a Raging Storm in hand, and it gets to the point where if you're only playing one character, Trever has to be very careful, because if he does go wide, if he does say, I can get momentum back, it might be the last thing he ever does.
And that's one of the challenges against playing against these board wipes. This was the game when Be Prepared was out or around in the meta. There's always this sub game of, I want the Be Prepared to be played on my terms. So I'm just going to play 1 or 2 characters a turn, just kind of slowly try to draw it out so it's played when I want it to be played. It will banish my characters, but then I have the cards in my hand to rebuild. And that, if Trever knows it's coming, is one of the things he's thinking about doing here. So now we're going to see challenging. And so one of the things that we just saw here is Eric is making sure this is being sequenced properly, because Calhoun, if it does the final challenge, will gain 2 lore off banishing the Hades. So I think just clearing up there, making sure that the Elsa challenged first before that Calhoun coming in and clearing things up. And then that last Elsa will get a quest, bringing Trever up to 7. So, yeah.
And now we're seeing why the Cauldron is nice, because we have this board state where Eric has nothing, Trever has things, but the less you give, the more you take away from Eric, the more he's willing to burn it all down with a Raging Storm. So it's kind of such a delicate balance. Like you said, Be Prepared was a very hard time mentally because it's you got to make him have it. Trever knows that Eric has Wyld, or Eric has Wyld. Eric has Raging Storm, because why would you be playing this deck and getting this much ink if you don't? But he doesn't know when he's going to use it. He doesn't know if he has it in hand. I'm sure he thinks he does at this point. But before we get to any kind of Raging Storms, he's not too afraid of those 2 Elsas. They only quest for 1. He can pull that emergency eject button, and now he just wants a little bit more resources, because after the Raging Storm, you want to go ahead and rebuild your board.
Yeah, and Eric, I think, found that Cinderella off the visions. This deck, this Amber Sapphire deck, wants to have a ton of ink in the inkwell, because for its end game, it wants to be able to... Oh, and we found the Black Cauldron off the top. It's one of the cards that Eric is looking for in this deck in the end game. Some decks, I've seen versions that don't play it, but I think it is really important to the game plan of this deck. Eric here is going to get a quest out of that Cinderella, will invite the challenge, but no, instead it's going to Raging Storm, clear everything off. Doesn't have enough ink to establish that Cauldron as well, but just going to hit the big old reset button. And after getting 1 quest out of that Cinderella, 1 draw, and now it's back over to Trever to rebuild.
Yeah, and I think that is the pain of a board wipe. And I said board wipe with an asterisk, and then there's board wipe. Raging Storm is currently the only true board wipe. Both sides, no conditions. We are board wiping, but this is why Eric doesn't love against this deck. Because look how fast he just rebuilt. He was able to play 3 characters and refill his hand, and it's like, what's Storm? I don't know what you're talking about. It was a light drizzle.
Yeah, and we've seen 2 docks played, like when it was too early. Trever didn't want to, just played to get a body on the board, but now playing this dock at the perfect time, emptying his hand, hitting that dock, drawing 2 cards. So Trevor's doing what he needs to do to stay in this game. And these Amethyst Steel decks can burn out unless you find that card draw in the mid game, and Trever has managed to do that and stay in this, particularly with that dock at the right time. Yeah. Here's that Cauldron, Katie.
There we go.
Double Cauldrons.
Double boil and trial. Black Cauldron Burn and Black Cauldron Bubble. Somewhere in the world, Color is Law is running around and screaming and going, yippee, yippee, because she is a true Black Cauldron believer. But it is an investment card. I think of it kind of similar to Junior Woodchuck Guidebook in the sense that you're investing in your future. You're putting some stuff in a cauldron. You're putting it in a slow cooker. It's a crock pot. It's plugged in and starting. He's going to work, and when he comes home, he hopes he can use it. But Trever has to keep that in mind because, yeah, there's a Hades in the crock pot, and he can smell it cooking.
Hades in the crock pot. It's an infernal smell.
We've never got to play around with these. I've never casted a Black Cauldron, and I'm cooking right now. I'm Julia Childs.
You're cooking like the Hades.
I think that's Mrs. Doubtfire. It's a similar bit.
I think you hit it.
But here we go. The Cauldron is bing. It just set the timer for ready. So now he's got ink. He's got options. And there we go.
The storm is still raging back on here. Going to clear Trevor's board again. Trever has a couple cards in hand that he can use to be build with, having hit that genie, that dock. So 2 or 3 cards there. Eric trying to figure out now, what do I have left? Do I have enough to put something else in the cauldron? Trevor doing the old card read.
Yeah, he says, what is that?
Yeah, let me
and
take a look.
honestly, it is a storm shelter. You are allowed to shelter inside a cauldron. Now, with 2 cauldrons, it's interesting because the ability is you can go ahead and pay 1 and exert it to play anything from a single cauldron. I'm trying to think, is there a utility of having 2 cauldrons out other than it's kind of intimidating?
You can stash 2 characters a turn.
That's true. It's 1 per turn. So yeah, he's truly, and that's why this is something that's very menacing in Disney Lorcana. When people have their discard out like this, that's how you know they have a hand, they have their draw pile, and then they have their second hand. And then they have the third hand, the cauldron hand. You have your heart hand, your discard, the cauldron. And so Trever needs to keep his wits about him because there's some dark magic out there.
Yeah, but managing to push his lore total all the way to 12, this is a precarious situation for Eric. He has to play this just right because every single lore that Trever manages to scoop up feels really, really bad at this point. And unfortunately for him, nothing much in his discard pile as well. You know, one of the things that you lose when you work Amethyst out of this deck, I call it a blurple deck, but you lose the Amethyst card draw.
Yes.
All of that making card draw, which is incredibly important. So now as I'm saying this, the Black Cauldron, Hades coming out of there, sending that that Jafar, Giant Spectral Parrot, Iago, Giant Spectral Parrot into the Inkwell, and Elanway coming out for good measure. And we are going to see Cinderella tucked under that other cauldron. So here we go. This is why you have 2. You're cooking. You're baking you're cooking a Cinderella while you're deploying the Hades.
Yeah,
so
it's a party.
You're doing both.
Yeah.
But because you lose that Amethyst card draw, you have to find other ways to do it. One of the ways is Cinderella, but another way, you work in cards like Lilo Surfer. I'm sorry, Leela Surfer. Wow, I'm mixing up all the characters. The Stitch, the Surfer Stitch,
yes.
That draws you 2 cards when you have 2 other characters in play.
Which you summoned it to hand.
Which there you go, he has in hand. So you want that in your discard pile because you can imagine the effect of deploying that numerous times with the Cauldron over and over and over again. And at this point, Eric hasn't managed to dump one of them in there. But at this point, we're going to start to see that get going here. If Eric has the time.
Yeah, and shout out, there's a Disney show called Once Upon a Time, or maybe it was just once, actually. And in it, there's a character, I think his name was Rumpelstiltskin, that said, all magic comes at a price, and that is the magic of Demona, where Demona said, I get to draw 3 cards, and Eric said, I get to draw 3 cards too, which is why Demona's kind of a dangerous thing in a lot of matchups, because a lot of players, if you don't have Amethyst, you're like, I need cards. And so giving them cards can feel terrible. But like you said, Trevor's feeling pretty comfortable. He's saying, I just need to navigate the storms. I've already weathered 2. Spooky Sight becomes less scary the more expensive characters come out. 75% of his board is Spooky Sightable right now. So Trevor's just saying, I got to stay in this. But more cards go in, the more that they're saying Blelo to this Blelo. I don't like it. I tried to call it Blelo, and I don't like it. But here we go. Hades Infernal Schemer coming down and saying, Demona, you're the scourge of the ink total.
Yeah, wanted to get that off the board, and Trever leaving everything upright, not allowing, because one of the things that Eric would love is to get that Hades that deployed back in his discard pile to bring it back, but Eric finding a Hades off the Develop Your Brain, the perfect answer to that Demona, so now Trever left again with only 3 lore on the board, all of which are answerable by the characters that Eric has ready. And again, like there's this quandary you have now where you want to banish things on Eric's side of the board. You want to get those Hades into the discard pile, but at the same time, if they're in the discard pile, they can come back and banish your things and send them to the Inkwell. So it is a real challenge here for Trever to navigate this, especially if he's not used to playing against this Black Cauldron build.
That's I mean, the Black Cauldron right now is reminding me very much of Chromacon, and not in the functionality, but in the way it makes your opponent say, I have to make choices here. And one of the things I find, and this is why bringing a spicy off-meta deck can be powerful, is when you run these drills with your teammates or by yourself, you're saying, these are the lines of play. Nobody practices against the double Cauldron line of play very often. And I mean, I'm sure somebody out there has. I'm sure Wyld Eric's teammates like, every week I have to practice against it. But the more decisions you give your opponent, the more that you give them a chance to make the wrong one. So Eric, he is at 3 lore. Trever is still slowly inching forward, but he has to be nervous because he doesn't know what wild thing Eric is going to do next.
Yeah, it was a great pun there. Eric plays for Wilder Gaming, his team in Austin. So great.
Yeah.
I don't know if that was unintentional. But
somebody out there said, I used to hate you for your puns, but now I love you. And I said, well, watch out. It's me and Liam in the booth. And they said, no, I love that. So we are the punniest team on earth. But I can't. I was going to say something quippy after that, but I ain't got no quips because this is quite the board state. And there we go. Moana, make way. She is a tool for getting that ramp because now everything's sitting on the discard pile. That's ink too. So it's kind of crazy. Eric's playing from literally every zone except for ink. Get out Mufasa, then suddenly he can play from his ink too. But this is a very, very tricky deck to navigate.
And you can see the game plan here with cards like Moana in the late game, with him doing the double ramp with the Cinderella. This is exactly what this deck wants to do. As I mentioned, it wants a huge ink. Now every deck wants a lot of ink, but this deck wants a huge inkwell in the end game. So after board resets like Raging Storm, you can play 2, 3, 4 characters out of your Black Cauldrons, and that's really how this deck often closes things out. Eric doing some challenging here, getting those exerted characters off the board, but that Christopher Robin, a great play for Trever this turn, or last turn, unless Eric has a spot removal answer, which we're about to see. Oh, it's a Pete, another fantastic card. But unless he has a spot removal for that Christopher Robin is going to get 2 lore, bringing Trever within a few of winning here. Here comes that Dumbo card that he would have wanted earlier on, but it's going to serve him well here, gaining him cards and lore at the same time. On the other side, Pete, a card that a lot of people said low-key was one of the best cards in this set, Ghost of Christmas Future. Boost 1, any card with boost 1 is good, but every time you boost, it allows you to look at a number of cards on the top of your deck equal to the cards under him and draw cards. So developing your brain here every time, or better.
Yeah, I mean, the value that you're able to get from boost abilities is fascinating. And like you said, boost 1 good, because we've seen boost 2. The other day I was playing Treasure Count, and I said, boost 2.
Yeah, boost 2, meh.
Yeah, right. Everybody, all my friends say boost 1 is good. But it's so crazy because it really is a battle, or really is a journey of inches for Trever, because he's not able to do the crazy things that Eric is doing on his side. He is fighting against dark magic, where we have Black Cauldrons. We have things coming out of cauldrons, out of discards. So he's just like, I guess I'll do the best I can with the resources I have. In this case, he has a Treasure Cat that can do a challenge and move it over with that boost 2 effect. Because, I mean, thankfully, Eric gave him the gift of ink. And now it's just like, what is his time clock here? He has a total of 6 on board. Nope. 5?
Yeah.
5. I was right the first
5,
time.
yeah.
So that is not what we would call a game on board, but it is scary. We got a Cinderella cooking up in the crock pot. We got Pete there ready to get some more cards. So Trever is just saying, can I stay in this game long enough to outlast the shenanigans happening on Eric's side?
This is such a fun board state here. I think Trever has dumped his entire hand on the board, putting almost game on board with what he has there. Eric has some answers for those exerted characters, but also a way to dig. Now, an interesting note here. We look at Raging Storm, how important it is to this deck. Eric has played 2, and I believe I saw 1 go to the bottom of the deck earlier with the Visions of the Future. So usually you do run, sometimes you run 3, sometimes you run 4. There may only be 3. If there are, there's not one of those available. There is a spooky sites usually available as well. So Eric now trying to just keep things under control long enough for him to really go off, but only at 4. This is a really, really tense board state.
Yeah, and there is just sometimes like we talk about these matchups and we're like, what's on board? But there's always this hanging ambient giant cobra that hangs over all of us. So even if he's able to get rid of the 2 exerted characters on those boards, Dumbo can exert and get lore and draw a card and get closer. Because if you have just 1 card in hand, Dumbo can help say, oh, don't worry, I'll get you more cards in hand. So Eric needs to pull out all the stops here, and Dumbo is not afraid of anything spooky. There's no mice on this premise to cause him a fright. So yeah, he doesn't even need. I think it's funny watching Cinderella sit in the Black Cauldron and be like, "Am I coming out?
Oh.
You were not. Let it go, Dumbo."
Let it go. One of the cards reprinted in Winter Spell, and every Blurple player, every Sapphire player, really excited to see it back. It really allowed that deck to power to the top of the meta, and we're seeing Pete sing it here, sending that Dumbo to the Inkwell. Now I think we're going to see Hades pulled out, sent to that crockpot to cook with Cinderella. It's a really interesting brew being
It's like Remy,
brewed up there.
Remy taking a Cinderella and a Hades and like
Put them together, and what do you got?
You got a problem because my goodness, he has so much ink right now. It's just this Dumbo against the world, but man, it's still Dumbo can exert for 1. Giant Cobra could be 2.
I call this recipe Bibbidi Bobbidi Blue.
I'm so sorry. You were like, Katie, please, this is so good. And that was honestly good. But here we go. It's Dock o'clock, and we're all clocked in.
Deck, right? Great top deck.
Yeah, because that's what 2 cards off dock, 1 card per turn. Dumbo can exert.
Oh no! Oh no!
Benja!
Benja coming in here. It's in here for the Chromacons. It's not even in. Nobody puts it in thinking, I'm going to banish the Black Cauldron today. But here it comes. That bibbity bobbity blue heading to the discard pile. And Eric's going to have to cook on his other crock pot now. Luckily, he has 2. But what? Dock into Benja.
Dock into Benja to, yeah. And he said, guess what? Someone said, we have food. They said, we have food at home. And Benja says, we're ordering out tonight. And he took the Black Cauldron. That was insane to see. And Benja, I respect it. Because we talked about, do you bring in item removal? Do you bring in cauldron removal? And Trever said, I do. I never leave the house without my cauldron remover. Cauldron, we have the zoologist in chat.
And shambles. I know.
I feel bad. I summoned color. I was like, you gotta see this.
But luckily, you have a backup cauldron, right?
Yes, I always bring a backup. That's why he
always bring a spare.
Oh, okay.
And so we've got one left, but that feels really bad, especially losing that Hades out of there. That would have been how you want to answer this. And now Trever, all the way up to 17, with the strength for good measure, going to get rid of that Hades. So, my goodness. So Eric is going to want to find another Raging Storm. Again, I know 2 have been played. There's 1 that was cycled to the bottom of the deck. A Spooky Sight would also be very good. Let's see if he finds it. He's got that Pete. He can look.
Yeah. Here we go. This is inking the Horseman Strikes because we don't have, well, Dumbo's evasive. But either way, we got bigger plans here. We're going to go ahead and use that Pete. He is boosted. So we can go ahead and search here.
Oh, we have Cinderella and Moana.
2 princesses that are nice, but not necessarily going to get him out of this situation. Like you said, he is trying to dig deeper because, like you said, a Spooky Sight would get rid of everything but that Dumbo. And that Dumbo is exerted, although that Horseman Strikes would have been quite well suited for him. So he's just kind of looking for as much answers as he can. Let's see what he has.
Yeah, I think he knows he needs all the ink to dig here, and here's why. You know, Spooky Sight, you need to have the ink to play it, but then if you draw into a bigger card, like let's see that Surfer Stitch, which you just drew, that's another 2 cards. You need a lot of ink to play it. So I think making that that calculus there.
Spooky Sight is famously not a song. Oh, there's Ohana means family,
okay.
And family means everybody gets 3 cards right off the top here. And there we go, another. I think that's the first ink that he did. And there we go, Horseman Strikes, the second one coming in. Can target anything with evasive, so Dumbo is now into the discard, able to draw a card.
Are we going to sing? Are we singing?
Let It Go. What song? Yeah.
Let It Go. Okay, we got it. It's going to hit the Benja. Going to get rid of that too.
Okay.
Okay, so we're still in the game. We have another turn. Oh my goodness.
This is very interesting. This is not a matchup I have observed before.
6, 7, 8. So 8 lore on the board. I mean, Eric would love to put game on board right now, but I can't do it just yet. But oh my goodness, I mean, you just need to buy turns. Getting another Pete on board would be nice. There's so many.
He just played that Stitch, right?
I'm having fun.
Or no, that's the other old one. Oh, that's old Surfer Stitch. There's 2 in hand, 2 on board. This is something we haven't seen in millennia, where we have Surfer Stitch just being resplendent on board. So Eric was able to do a lot this turn. He was able to go ahead and get revenge on Benja for ruining his dinner tonight. He was able to go ahead and search for lots of cards, digging with Horseman Strike, taking rid of that Dumbo. And now Trever has 2 lore on board. Now, that being said, Calhoun can do some challenging, but she would have to get rid of what's on board, which would be very difficult knowing her strength is only 3 and Doc can't do much help. And the journey of the magical top decks has ended here. And he is able to quest here for 1, pass and say, I hope against all hope these 2 cards stay upright and active for 1 full turn, because that's what he needs to get through here. So no Let It Goes, no Spooky Sights, no Raging Storms. Lots of things he's hoping not to see right now.
Yeah, and him leaving that Calhoun up there as well, knowing that Eric has to challenge into that dock. And so Calhoun being the crackback answer, it only has 1 lore, but if it banishes a character in a challenge, you gain 2. Also serves as the 2 lore quester to close things out next turn. So fun there. Eric now, let's see, has a Pete on board. He can dig, he can look. He's trying to do the math. Can I put game on board this turn? Hades now going to banish that Calhoun, so that's one of the characters he needs to remove. Now game is still on board, but we do have a challenger for that dock. Pete's going to come in, going to remove that dock, and now Eric doing the math here. Let's do it with him. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 going on the board. That's all the way up to 14, and that will be game on board. And so Trever now is in top deck mode, has to find something to either win the game if there's any sort of reach in this deck, which usually there is not. Unless you have the Cobra. It could be running the Cobra.
Yeah, I
But
mean, Cobra is
we
a
haven't seen
perennial
one yet.
favorite, and you have to draw cards with it. Because if you top deck a Cobra, you need to top deck Cobra's best friend. Because that is one of the, where I said that strength of the heartbreaking top deck, Cobra is the second most heartbreaking top deck because you have to have a full turn to get another card with it if you don't have any card draws. So he's looking at his hand. If it's a Cobra, I'm going to pour out my bubble tea in memory of what could have been. But he's thinking. He's not
Yeah,
slamming it.
you'd need to string a dock into a
Yes.
Cobra, you know.
It needs to be all of it. And Trevor's had a lot of spectacular answers, but what an insane. We talk about Raging Storm. I mean, there we go.
Oh, it's those. Oh my goodness, so close, so close.
And that, if I was Trevor, I would say, can we take a little break? Can I take a lap? Because that was so much to be against. To have to look at his discard, his 2 cauldrons just bubbling away, knowing that Eric just had so much ink. That turn 3 spooky sight, I think, was very pivotal, especially because Trever had a pretty rough start with the docks. He had docks not being used to their full advantage, so he's already having a bad time. And then Eric said, "Hey, want to see a cool trick? I can wipe your board on turn 3."
Right, and it's really interesting too because there was a part of me because knowing that the genie is coming down next turn usually in this deck, and it did. Like Trevor played the genie next, and you'd love, well, I don't know. The point I was trying to make is like you almost think it's premature to wipe it in that scenario because the lore total is low. But look at where things ended up. Eric knows kind of this matchup and knows that this Amethyst Steel deck is going to get to 16, 17, 18 lore, especially if it's running the Cobras and can start dumping cards at certain points in the game. And so trying to keep the clock on a certain pace throughout the game and knows, hey, I can afford this much lore in this turn, this much lore in this turn. I can't let him get to, 14 to 16 lore before I manage to get this board state to keep things under control. So Eric managing that clock perfectly. I will say I am talking a lot about Eric, I will admit, because Eric is a local of mine in Austin. Really fantastic player who was 8th in the Dallas DLC and did play in Continental, so is a Golden Mickey winner.
What?
Yep.
He has a Golden Mickey.
Eric does have a Golden Mickey. So a player who knows this game very well, started playing, all the way back when the game came out and competed in Continental. So a player that I know pretty well.
Which I do love seeing that. I love players that have been around the game and are willing to try to push the limits of what the decks can do. Trever here, he is playing a deck that, I mean, we've seen do well many sets in a row now. I think, it was doing quite well before rotation, before Fabled was printed, and it kept doing well because people talk about fair and unfair decks, and it's a really complicated concept to discuss, and I don't love it. But the best way I've heard it described is like, how many things are you doing per turn? Where are you accessing your resources? And Trever is playing what can be considered like one of the most fair decks in the sense that it's just playing stuff. Now it does draw a lot of cards, but it's doing it pretty. I call it like the Honda Civic. It just drives down the center of the road, and we saw that happen. Eric is sitting there throwing absolute raging storms, things out of black cauldrons, everything and anything was being thrown at Trever, and Trever just had his hands on 10 and 2 and said, "Keep driving." Yep. And it almost worked. I mean, he got all the way to 18. So, I mean, that is the beauty of Amethyst Steel, is it doesn't have to do anything fancy. The fancy thing is being stable and staying in the game. So, Eric is now saying, I've done it once. I've shown you all the cool little tricks I can do, or maybe. But this time, Trever says, okay, well, that was really scary, but I think it's time for me to stabilize on my turns.
So the challenge here for Trever is he knows, having watched this game play out with the Cauldrons and the Raging Storms, that inevitability is probably with Eric. That if this game goes along, Eric, especially if he's able to loop Hades with those Cauldrons, will win the game in the long run. So Trever wants to be aggressive and to run underneath this deck and to gather as much lore as possible before Eric gets things in hand. The problem is, Eric is able to do some double ramp shenanigans and get to that spooky side as fast as possible. So Trever is trying to think about, how do I be as aggressive as I can possibly be, while at the same time not exposing myself to a devastating spooky site, which will force me to completely rebuild in the mid game. And we are seeing the 1 ramp out of Eric here, and Eric is slowing down that lore gain, having that Leon Way go in and challenge into that Captain Hook.
Yeah, he said you wouldn't have the guts, because oftentimes you'll see these Amethyst Steel players not elect to do any challenging or questing early on because of that strength we just saw go in the Inkwell, because their whole goal is to get to the point where they have a wide board to take advantage of strengths of Raging Fire. In this case, he elects to ink it, and he goes wide because if you know a board wipe is coming, and he knows a character's not coming for a while, he might just be electing to take advantage of this time in the sun before the storm starts.
Yeah, interesting choice here. So we saw... and Trever doesn't know this, we know this. Cinderella played here, which allows him to ink another card. We saw a Cauldron go in
Yes.
which is fascinating because usually you run 1, sometimes you run 2. Usually you don't run 3. And so we know Benjas are running around as well. So it's just an interesting note that one of those cauldrons is now in the Inkwell.
Yeah, and also in the Inkwell, we've seen a giant cobra, 2 giant cobras inked, and a strength. We're kind of seeing like, hey, those cards were pretty helpful last time. You might want to. So this always tells me a couple things. Either the cards in hands are really good or the cards in hand are really bad, and they're just trying to stay in. Now, Trever has his time in the sun, and the sun is coming out shiny. For those watching, if you're kind of wondering why, there is an atrium. They're in an atrium, so if a cloud changes, that is truly the nature of storm. So if it gets darker, it means a raging storm or a literal storm is here.
Yeah, it's actually funny because if you watch round 1, you saw it get very bright and very dark. They moved over a screen to block the table, so it's less now. But what you're seeing is actually the sun blasting in through the atrium and shining on the
players
table.
don't have to deal with that very often. We see the sun so infrequently. You see it in the morning when you walk to the tournament, and then usually the sun is gone by the time the tournament's over. Oh, everybody listening, it's daylight savings time this weekend.
I know.
So please remember that. That's just a reminder. If you're in Europe, good luck. I don't know what you're going.
Yeah.
I don't know what you're doing. But anyway, so tonight's a less hour of sleep. So we have 8 rounds, and then we have our top cut tomorrow. So these players, they're going to play, and it looks like a cloud did come. Does that mean a storm is brewing? He has 5 ink in the Inkwell right now. That Cinderella's on board, so she needs maybe a Moana with her to get some more ink going. Moana actually can be played to ink Sail, which is crazy business. So there's lots of things he can do. But like we said, Eric's goal is to get to the absolute power ink ability or ink account where he can do everything and anything. And that's why Spooky Sight is kind of bad. It's good and bad, right? Because it gets rid of the board. Trever, he has 2 cards in hand. He gets to the point where, he doesn't need more than 6 ink and generally doesn't get more than 6 ink. But if you give him 6 ink, it's not the worst thing to ever happen. It's kind of a luxury when you play Steel and somebody does something like that. You're like, okay, well, now I can do some stuff I never would have been able to do without you. But here he goes. He's kind of debating here. And there we go. Cinderella, who is a princess.
Interesting. So we're going to get to double ink and double draw off that. I do see a couple of Hades in hand, but looking to get... And so that might explain... Oh, 3 Hades now. Oh my goodness.
Yeah, Clumpy Hades and Clumpy Hades and Clumpy Docks are actually the worst thing in the world.
Yeah.
Docks are sad because you have to play them early, but then Hades, you're just like navigating and you're saying, listen, that's why Cinderella's good because she can help clear out a hand like that, but you don't control what you get. You're basically gambling and saying, do I bet the card I will draw is better than this card I have? And the thing is that Hades is pretty good later. Just not so good when you're waiting to get to that 7 ink. But next turn, those Hades can start flying fast and free.
Yeah, and that was the Spooky Sight turn. So Eric kind of shaking his head, looking for that. Really needed to reset the board there. Now, it's not the end of the world. Trevor's going to be able to go up. Oh, goodness, offering a deal here. Eric doesn't even think about it. Yep, that's gone. Because he's going for a board reset anyway. And able to quest now for 6, all the way up to 12. So not ideal, but... we are going to have 8 ink this turn, so able to play that Raging Storm if we draw it off the top deck. It was an Amber card. I don't think it was the Storm. So this is going to be tough unless he drew. Did he draw it? No, it's a Hades. Okay. So Hades is going to come down. I imagine that Genie. Yep, Genie's going to go into the Inkwell here. That leaves 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 ink on board. That Cinderella not able to do much. You could banish the Olaf. Okay, we're going to banish the Olaf, and we'll see if Trever elects to send something back to hand here, because I think you provide some insurance against that. Okay, so there's a couple lines here. You could take that Hades, which can banish a character, or you could take the Christopher Robin, the highest lore quester, to protect it. Trever looking for the Hades here, and it'll go back over to him, electing to keep that lore now.
Yeah, and saying maybe we can deal in the future. He says, I'm a bit of a businessman. And like, he might not know. I mean, there are 1,000 Hades in Eric's hand. So it is kind of anything you want to protect, you might want to at this point. So he does say, Hades, you look a lot like me. Let's look for a deal here. And he does go ahead and pass a second time.
Immediately benefiting from that Hades. Eric, in this time, does take the deal, says, all right, I'll keep this. You can draw 2 cards. That Hades will be important to challenge into that Christopher Robin. And Calhoun going to go get that extra lore, banishing that Cinderella, giving Trever an extra 1 over her lore amount, up to 14 now. That Christopher Robin available for the quest.
Yeah, and this is something that is tricky. This is something I've always explained, and it's hold on. But when I see control decks, I always say you have to be comfortable losing for most of the game because you kind of are losing until the point you win. And so right now, you look, it's 14-0, one character on the board to four characters on the board. Now, the thing that's tricky is what you kind of want to do is you want to make sure they have no cards in hand. So those Hades are kind of a tricky thing to do because if he can get to the point where he starts controlling, meaning he goes ahead and does a board wipe, then he doesn't want Trever to come back. Because as we see, he comes back fast and furious. He did ink 2 of those giant cobras, but yeah, I mean, it might be something where this is too much to ask to control.
Yeah, I mean, you really need the Raging Storm here. That is ideal. And even a spooky set would be fantastic here as well, just leaving that Hades up. But doesn't look like he has it. Eric kind of shaking his head, trying to figure out what are the implications here if I just manage to remove 1 or 2 characters. It's tough.
Yeah, and it's just the psychology of it all, right? Like, I think it's so fascinating. When these players pick their decks, they have to pick something that meets their play style. And so Eric has to be okay with being in this position, right? Or he has to be okay knowing that, like, the game keeps restarting. And so even if he goes ahead and does this board wipe, Trevor's hand scares me because it could be 2 little guys and a dock, and so I'm very scared. He'll start with one of those 3 Hades we saw in his hand. He will pick. This time, it is not bouncing anywhere. It's going to go to the Inkwell, giving Trever more access to more resources. But notably, still, he has to deal with at least. There we go. So he has.
Yeah, and a tough choice here, though, because it does leave. We'll see what else he has, but it does leave that Hades exposed to that Calhoun challenge here, that Captain Hook having Challenger 3. That does give the extra lore off that challenge. Eric instead getting that Hades off the board, which notably is not susceptible to spooky sight, so that's possibly a
Yeah.
issue.
So, man, if you hear us being quiet, it's the math of it all where I'm like, what are the permutations of the matrix here where we get through? Because, I mean, we have Trever with 3 cards in hand, or 4? And that's like infinite with Amethyst. When I see more than 2, I'm like, they have everything. So he hasn't, has he passed yet? Yes, because Trever just ready to zinc. So Trevor's deciding, what do I want to do? He knows that there is the board wipening that can happen. So he could choose to quest for 2 here and just wait and have a giant Cobra and be like, whatever. But he inked 2 of them, which feels miserable because that would have helped him win the last game. So seeing it inked early was really a hard thing to watch. So he is debating, exerting 3, wondering what that could be here.
Yeah, and Eric having to challenge into that other character, the lore. Oh, okay.
Okay, so we have 2 Hades exerted here. Elsif's Spirit does force that interaction.
That's okay. I mean, it's same scenario really either way. So going to put 3 onto that Hades, and Calhoun's going to go clean it up. That'll be 2 lore there, and then he'll get another one off the Captain Hook.
Yeah, and that is Elsa has evasive. Now we have seen Horseman strikes, so that is a perfectly sized solution for an Elsa 5th Spirit, and it does let Eric draw a card. But it's crazy. Captain Hook is not known for being a late game answer to winning. But there we go. The Horseman strikes fast and fierce here.
Yeah, and so interestingly, one of the reasons why so there's different reasons why you would choose to leave the character up versus taking lore. One of the things Trever playing around here is Ohana. Even though it's just 1 card, Hades being able to challenge and banish the Captain Hook gives him 1 damage counter to play with. Off that, Ohana means family if Eric's digging for answers.
If it was a Rapunzel trap, is this a family trap?
It's a family trap. Yes.
Or no, it'd be parent trap. Dang it, it's not a joke. I missed it. Family trap sounded like something.
Yeah.
Ohana trap? Either way. And the trap is referring to is leaving damage. And it's fascinating because now there's lots of reasons to fear leaving damage around. We have that Cheshire Cat. Now we have this Angel's another reason. Because if you have damage hanging on, then all it takes is 2 more. You can say, oh, it's fine. I took 1 or 2 damage. But then Angel can change that math. So at this point, though, Trever, he's not really interested in doing any controlling, any math. His only math is how do I get to 20? And the answer is just count on him not having a Raging Storm. Get lore, you can have it. If it survives, it does. Keep cards in hand. So if there is a storm, you can weather it.
Very good. Very good.
Very good. I like that when Liam proves it.
Very good. I have to acknowledge it.
It does. Acknowledge. We move on, but we acknowledge team. But here we go. Does he have?
He does not.
Okay.
I'll spoil it.
Man, all right, the drama.
Unfortunately, he does a couple of Surfer Stitches, and one of the problems is Eric just not a great draw this game. We saw 3 Hades clumped up early on. Now multiple Surfer Stitches, which are great in the scenario usually, but not when what you're trying to do is actually clear off the board. So we'll draw 2. We'll see if we draw into it. Raging Storm in action. You cannot sing it. So It
Let
is
the raging storm. No.
let the
Let the storm rage
raging
on.
storm
Yeah.
on.
It's raging storm. That's honestly something that happens to me when I play all the time. Is like, what if I can sing it as a song? Can I negotiate to make this be a song, please?
Yeah.
There are a few cards that have been that way. You Have Forgotten Me is one I always was like, you have forgotten me, but it's not a song. So here we go. We are looking at the math. We're saying, listen, one is all he needs. There's so many ways he can get to one. He can get to one with Cook. He can get there with Angel. In this case, we'll start the challenge here. We do have access to a couple things. We've already seen 2 Hades. Let it go. That's a good one. That's letting the storm rage on in the old-fashioned way, and he says no. He just showed it to say, I could have, but this time, no. So Trever got there 1 inch at a time.
Yeah, speaking of time, Katie, it's a great segue because the clock could be an issue here. We saw game 1 go incredibly long, and this game drawn out a little bit too. Definitely not as long, but 14 minutes is not a lot of time to navigate a game when you're working towards a very, very a deep end state where Black Cauldron is online. You're doing some crazy shenanigans in the end game. So both players will have to play with alacrity here to keep this from ending in a 1-1 draw.
Yeah, and it's fascinating because at this point, Eric is going first. So I have to say that he had a very good game 1. So, I mean, he's probably looking to replicate that magic that he summoned from the Cauldron. But like you said, his game plan is pretty grindy. And that's one of the things that can be very hard about these control decks is you can win, but it's a lot of setbacks, right? It's a lot of things he does that doesn't cause Trever to lose. It doesn't cause Eric to win. It just gives chances for Eric to win later. And so it can be very, very hard to be against. It can be very hard as a player because you have to have quite the endurance. This is a great deck to play if you don't like bathroom breaks or snacks at tournaments.
That's why I don't play them. I play I play mid-range.
Yeah,
so
right. Mid-range, I'd like to have a chance.
So people like aggro, people like control. I'm like, I want to do both.
Mid-range.
Give me mid-range tempo.
Yeah, honestly, such a... Let me just have a little fun in the middle, right?
Yeah.
But in this case, I mean, Trever is running pretty mid-rangey of a deck. He's able to kind of hang out there around... I feel like when his deck is singing the most, when it's really being the most powerful, is after that turn 4, when he's able to sing Strength, he's able to start playing Docks, he's able to get Damona's Fifth Spirit. So Eric, if he can get out on early Spooky side again, that really cuts the power of this deck down by quite a lot. I'm hoping he's going to, I don't know, maybe we'll get to see a Giant Cobra do something here, but...
So you mentioned these decks are mid-range, and I would argue they got more mid-rangey this meta because it did get a couple cards which allow these decks to go faster. One of those cards that has been worked into the Amethyst Steel decks is Christopher Robin. I was looking to see if Trever had it because that underdog ability would be, this is the perfect scenario where you have a deck that you're trying to run under. Getting that Tool Requester on turn 1 would be fantastic. Trever doesn't have it. Unfortunately, we'll see if he draws into it here because that's Trevor's game plan here is, I think, go as fast as possible. And hope that Eric doesn't have a spooky site.
Yeah. And it's so funny because there's so many cards that are in this matchup where there is huge debates on whether they're good. And that's such a fascinating thing to say because it's like, what makes a card good? And I think it would be consistency. And some of these cards, the reason they debated is because there isn't always consistency. Whereas in the chat, we had somebody say Ohana's family is a trap. We have people saying that Black Cauldron is too slow. We have people, not in the chat, that's me just now saying it. But we also have Christopher Robin is one. I saw people debating today saying, what are you guys doing in there? Chuck, who I believe has played at a few CCSs, said, Christopher Robin is not enough. He's too little. He's not, what do you need that one extra lore for? He's gone. In this case, this is the least, this is the worst one drop in the game.
This worst, yeah, that empty board over there feels pretty bad when you're trying to go fast, but it's okay. This deck, Trever can have a game plan for sure. Okay, so one thing I also want to point out, sorry, I was looking at the hands as they were trying to alter. Eric does have a Black Cauldron in the opener, but Trever has a Benja in the opener, so...
He says, I'm keeping that.
Yeah, I'm going to hang on to that, so that's something to keep an eye on. Go ahead.
Well, no, developing. Oh, it's an interesting one.
Yeah, Eric, one thing he definitely wants to do, like this deck, kind of like Amethyst Steel, or I'm sorry, Sapphire Steel loves to double ramp. That Princess is in there for a reason. So one of the things you try to do is, do the 2, 4, 6, where you're skipping those odd turns. You don't always do it, but especially when your opponent gives you a little bit of breathing room like this by not having that one drop, you can definitely take the time to do it. And we do see that Cinderella. So we are going to see a much better game here from Eric's deck. But I do, again, I'm keeping an eye on that clock and watching how quickly these players play because that could be an issue here.
Yeah, and for those just tuning in, so we are in that game 3. Trever is at 0 and Eric is at 0 as well because there has not been any movement here. So Trever did not get his 1 cost. He did have to ink a Strength Raging Fire. He's playing Calhoun, which is fine, but generally meant for a more aggressive matchup because Cinderella's here to help. She's not here to really be doing any questing or challenging. So Eric is having quite a good time. You mentioned that Benja. Benja is nice to keep in the hand, but he's one of those cards that's like how much he's inkable. He's on that turn. You don't really want to be playing him. So it's like you have to keep him in the hand just for the cauldron. And is that a trap in itself? Are you figuring it too much?
That's a good question. Like the Eric can win without the cauldron. And so it is not one of those cards like the Chromicon, which are just so oppressive that you absolutely want to have it. But one thing I will note, if we're doing the cauldron versus Benja math, we did see Eric once again, as he did last game, ink his black cauldron off that Cinderella. And so if he's only running 2, we know he's running at least 2. If he's only running 2, there's only 1 available. And so keeping an eye on Trevor's Benja and whether or not that's available is something, it's a really fun sub-game here for us.
Yeah, and it's the math that they don't know because, I mean, your discard is public information, the board is public information, your ink is private. You don't have to share that with anyone. And that's one of the fun things about Sapphire is you do get to ink things without telling what it is or put things in your inkwell. But there is a powerhouse of this game. That's why I say turn 4 is great because that is when you can start sinking strength. You can go ahead. Genie is great because he has that evasive ability. He can quest for 2. And that being said, he is evasive. And the Horseman has been flinging pumpkins everywhere. And Eric loves to do it because not only does he get to take down an evasive, he gets to draw a card, which is just insult to injury there.
That's true. The Horseman Strikes loves to squash genies, but in this case, we're gonna hold that off a turn. Play the Surfer Stitch, which we haven't seen many played. I guess the first game we saw a couple played.
Yeah.
The very, very end game. But a great card all the way from set 1 will allow Eric to draw 2 cards because the Stitch does see those 2 Cinderellas in play. And it's a card that you love to get into your play and then into your discard pile to recur with those cauldrons later on. And speaking of Black Cauldron, Elanwe,
Send me on my way.
coming into play here, kind of filling that Basil role that we often see in Blurple decks with that support ability.
Yeah, and that is, I'm looking, is she... I looked to see if she's a princess, and her name is Princess of Lear. So yes, so she is able to synergize with that Cinderella. So she fits the bill in every way. Only 1 cost, and it can be fine because, like we saw, she synergized with Cinderella, and then it's that extra where you have extra ink.
2 draw 2 feels pretty good.
Yeah, right. So he's able to get a ton of value. He knows that Trever doesn't have access to a board wipe. So Raging Storm is great. But what's more great is not having to use it and just winning.
When your characters can just brawl.
Yes, because at the end of the day, you kind of have to look at the stats. And that Carefree Surfer, he's a 4/8. That's nothing to ignore here. That can take care of literally everything on the board with the exception of Genie. So if he has a pumpkin and anything exerted, Trever might not be able to do much else. So here we go. He has his 5 ink turn, and there's the 5th Spirit coming in. And what will she exert?
Yeah, this is a tale as old as, well, Shimmering Skies with Genie on 4, then the Elsa on 5, that evasive combo. And with that Cheshire Cat able to make use of damage, of course, no ink available to boost this turn, but we'll see if he does anything with it. The Surfer Stitch just a little...
And
well, we could brawl with a Calhoun.
There's so much tempting things, but all of it leaves damage, and all of it could hurt your chances at being able to get advantage of Strength of Raging Fire later. So it's kind of you're robbing Trever to do damage to Eric. And so he has to do that calculation. Is it worth it? And this is a trap I fall into all the time where I want to clean up my opponent's board so bad that I hurt myself in the melee and the confusion. So in this case, he will quest because he has that evasive and he knows we don't know how long they'll be around, and he chooses to keep the Cheshire Cat up. Better upright and able to move damage later than risking it.
Yeah, the cat shenanigans are always fun, and who will have a damage counter on that Calhoun to move around, although we'll see if she's there next turn. Trever does elect to take care of that Cinderella there, realizing the impact he can have drawing 2 and inking 2 every single turn that he manages to find a princess, so getting the extra lore out of it to boot. So Eric now has a bunch of different cards available here. We see an Ohana in hand, another Elanwe, which would have paired well with both those Cinderellas, now only 1 to make use of it. That Stitch will come surfing in first to banish that Calhoun, putting 3 damage counters on. And there's that Ohana means family.
And
family means I draw 3 cards. And drawing 3 cards off that. That was terrible.
I got scared because there's a chance he won't stop. It is actually something, it's a diagnosed illness where you can't stop talking like Stitch. But there we go. I mean, the synergy there.
Yeah, and you see the Stitch on both cards. Drawing 3 cards after moving those damage counters seems like a perfect scenario there. That Horseman Strike's going to squash that Genie. That's a pumpkin pun, and he'll draw a card off that as well. And feels like a pretty good turn. And again, Katie, I am just eyeballing that clock. These turns are long. These turns are long.
It is, and it's such a, like we said, I've said this twice, where it's kind of like a rock and a hard place where you want to play fast because winning is better. So if for people at home, every round, if you win, you get 3 points. If you lose, you get no points. And if you tie, you get 1. So it's like, okay, well, tie's good, but you want the 3 points, especially this early, because you want to just keep that momentum. And so these players want to keep going, but you don't want to go too fast, because if you go too fast, you make mistakes. And of these two decks, I mean, they both have very key math decisions they have to make. Eric is trying to manage his resources, and he's going to have 5,000 ink and hopefully get some cards soon. But Trever is trying to draw cards, and we've seen it. He just keeps going wide and refilling over and over again.
Yeah, getting this Dumbo out feels pretty good. One of the things that this Sapphire Amber deck struggles with is evasive characters, unless you have that Horseman Strikes available, and just not a lot of evasives, or any evasives really, that you can drop to the board. So if you can protect that Elsa till next turn, drawing numerous cards with that Dumbo feels pretty good. And now it's back over to Eric.
Yeah, and that Demona is such a fun card when it works, but when it doesn't, you're like, you are not getting on my board, Demona. If you don't need the cards, if you don't want your opponent. And there, look at this family.
Look at this family.
Look at it. And this is quite, Ohana means look at this family. This is a beautiful deck. It's a control deck for the friends and family, but this is a card, Sing Together, where you are able to, I have to look it up. There
I
we
can't
go.
remember the number
yeah,
of
look
cards.
at the top 5 cards. You reveal up to 2 character cards and put them in your hand, put the rest on the bottom. So it's kind of like a turbocharged Nani Stage Manager, where you're able 5, reveal 2, put them in your hand. And so that is quite nice for somebody who's looking for the tools he needs to survive these last few turns to kind of pump the brakes on Trever.
And I think he was looking for a Hades. Clearly would love a Hades here. I don't think he found it. I think if I was looking right, and I could have missed it, but I think only got 1 card out of that, another Surfer Stitch. Although I could be wrong. Yeah, looking for that Hades. He wants to take care of that Dumbo. And just vision looking. Last game we had 3 in the early game. Now we have none.
He had a spooky side in hand. He did not elect to keep it. That's always the heartbreaking thing of doing these visions and the look at the family is, look at this family specifically, is you don't get to keep everything. And so you are saying goodbye these cards because you don't get to shuffle your deck. You do send them to the bottom. In this case, he did pretty quickly keep a card. He exerts here. Is it that Hades? Did he get? No. It's a Surfer Stitch. Cowabunga. I don't know. Listen, I love Stitch, and you guys, you got 2 Stitch heads here.
That's true.
There's a Horseman Strikes in hand, so
that's true, and I think we're gonna see it right here.
Horseman Strike Watch.
Flinging it over there, getting rid of that Dumbo. That feels pretty good. We'll get a card out of it as well. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 lore on the board. So needs to start pushing his lore total at some point here. Force Trever into the control if he can. That would be ideal. But no, Pete's going to sing, not get any lore. He's going to send that Elsa to the Inkwell. So doing a lot of control. It looks like we will get a quest out of this Cinderella, but feels like a very impactful turn, getting rid of all the biggest threats. But again, that clock clicking, these turns are great. These turns are long, and we are racing the clock now.
Yeah, it's fascinating because the one thing I will say, as someone who's been in Trevor's seat before, the wider I see Eric go, the more I'm like, okay, so the storm's not happening. Because it's not a one-sided. We have so many one-sided board wipes right now. We have the Malicious Mean and Scary Prince Philip combo. We had, at one point, Sisu and Infinity. In this case, it is a grab your hand and take them with you kind of board wipe. So I'm happy if I'm Trever because I'm like, okay, that's not going to happen. But that being said, there's so many other things to worry about. Like we saw Spooky Psychic come, and that is a board wipe for you, but not for thee, but not for me. So if I'm Trever, I'm a little scared. And the pay place is tricky at this point because if we look at this, for people wondering how it goes, that Benja, he said, I wonder how long he held on to that Benja.
All game.
That was my goodness.
That was opening
and that was the thing
hand
we
Benja.
talked about. Was that a red herring?
But he had to play it because he needed the cards off dock. So he had multiple docks in hand, dumped a dock to play a dock after playing a dock, and that Benja had to come into on the board, or else he would have lost it. But as you mentioned, Spooky Sight, Katie, this is a spooky sightable board
it's a haunted
here.
house.
Oh my goodness!
So
all of those characters scared of ghosts.
Now here's the tricky thing: we have 1 minute left, and in the game of Disney Lorcana, once you pass your turn, so when it goes to time, it's whoever's turns it on. So at this point, I would bet $100 that it will go to turns on Eric's turn, meaning Eric gets to finish his turn, and then it goes to Trever, and you get 5 turns total. So you get to finish your turn, and the time he's playing kind of fast, which makes me believe maybe he does want to pass it.
I think he wants this extra turn. I mean, the ideal scenario here, if he can find a spooky site, clear his board, and then quest, he's he's got game.
Yeah.
Basically, there's
Nothing
really
he can do.
And so he's looking. He's like, where is that spooky side or anything to do? There's the Raging Storm. You don't want that
Yeah,
now.
that's like, no, get out of
No,
here.
get out of here. You're going to keep that Hades, I think. That Hades is fantastic because for Hades in this scenario does double duty, getting rid of that Christopher Robin, or Benja probably, with that 2 lore, but also putting another 2 lore character on the board because Eric needs to be able to win this game in a couple turns. So has to drop enough on the board
Yeah.
to threaten game.
Because you have to win in those 5 turns. So it is something where he's making that decision. We have 8 seconds. It might be a little bit off there sometimes between the string clock and the real clock. It might be a little bit different. But he's playing it because he wants, like you said, Trevor's going to have a hard time winning in 5 turns. Eric could possibly win in 5 turns. So Trevor is going to have to switch. If he can't get something on the board, he'll have to switch from making sure that Eric doesn't win. He can't win, but he can try to stop Eric from winning at a certain point. So he's not there yet. He didn't get Spooky Sight, but if he turns any of these cards sideways, there is a lot of challenge power on the other side. We have that LME with her support ability. Even that Tipo can be a problem. So we're going to start the questing, get the lore we can, say, sure, come and challenge me if you want to. I got to get to 20 lore. I don't think you can do it. You can't both quest and deal with everything I have. So here we go. Let's see how far he got up to in that lore total. Inking Ohana means family and passing.
And look at that, dropping that Tipo on the board just for a little extra lore. We've seen in DLCs, Tipo win.
Tipo can do it, guys.
Tipo can
we
do
have
it.
a Sky in chat who might tell the tale of the time he saw a Tipo win here.
And here, Eric doing the math here and choosing to banish the highest strength character rather than the highest lore character on Trevor's side of the board. The cat also can do some damage shenanigans, so challenging in, shifting damage around, banishing other characters, so choosing to protect his board as much as possible with that Hades. You know, Trever would love to have something with Rush. He would have loved to find an Elsa here, something he can do even more control, because now we're looking at a scenario, 1, 2, 3, it will be up. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 on the board, so that is game with what's on board, although Trever, plenty here to do some work.
And that's where it gets so hard, because Trevor gets to the point where he's like, I don't think there's any, well, okay, it depends what he has in hand. But Trevor has to know that his race is going to be harder with the cards he has on the board, because if they turn sideways,
I don't think he can do it.
Yeah, so it then is like,
because I mean,
have,
the only thing he can banish, he can get the Cinderella, he can get the Alonway, but that's not enough.
Was he taking the lore here? Yeah, he took the lore. He went to 13 and said, I'm going to bank on a Cobra coming
9,
in.
10.
He might go ahead and banish this. Okay.
Oh, okay. This feels good.
This is good. Now we need the Spooky Sight. He's doing the math, and this is takes you to 15. That Olaf is on the board, which means Olaf, he can only bounce he can bounce anything. So he could bounce that Cobra back to hand.
Uh-huh.
So he has to be so careful. If he runs that Olaf into something, he bounces the Cobra back into hand, and now the math is very in his does he do it? Yeah. So now that Cobra's back in hand, he has the ability where he has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 on board and 2 looming in the sky. We have a black Cauldron, Giant Cobra at it. So now Eric needs to do the math. I said, hey, I don't think Trevor can do it. But Trevor said, hey, guess what? I played this deck before. I know the math. I know the lines. So now, Eric, do you have any Spooky Sight? That if you do go ahead and do a Spooky Sight, keep in mind that Trevor can only get to 17 next turn. But man, this is the most important Spooky Sight you would ever find in all his days.
Yeah. So we've got the Pete. We can boost. We can look. Oh, this is so tough.
It is, right? Because, I mean, it's tricky because we said he doesn't want to play Raging Storm. There is a world where he doesn't get to the Spooky Sight, and he says, I don't want you to win. So, I mean, he could just play it and say we tied. Because it's on turn 2. Trevor had his turn 1. Eric gets 2 full turns. Trevor gets 3 because basically it was on Eric's turn when he passed, when it went to time.
Yep.
So
there's a world in which you just
you can't
wipe
win.
the board and say,
on to the next.
On to the next. So looking here, I mean, again, looking for that Spooky Sight. I think he's set aside just enough.
My favorite thing is you guys can't see this, but as the match starts, the camera starts, we lean back, and then we get closer and closer to right now. We look like a little kid watching Saturday morning cartoons. We're like,
just leaning in,
what's
trying
in the TV? So he is doing his own math here. He is saying, all right, what can I pull off here? That Pete does have the ability to dig. He's looking for a Spooky Sight. There's not really any characters, I think, that he wants. I think he wants his actions that are going to get him out of the scenario. On board, I think, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. So he has 11 on board. So he's just saying, I have to deal with Trevor's board. So he has to see how he can challenge into this. and then also get rid of Christopher Robin because if he keeps Christopher Robin, it's still not enough to win.
No, I really want to know how many are in Trevor's hand. If Trevor has 3 cards in hand, a double Cobra would do it.
I think he has just 1.
I think. Oh, just the Cobra?
I think so.
Okay.
I think he went as wide as he could and then bounced back. And he's I think my tell is he's like twirling it in his hand.
Got it.
He would be shuffling. So there we go. We're doing the challenge. We're seeing how many we can challenge without losing the character. Not too hard to do these challenges. These are little scrawny bodies. Now, Eric does want the lore, so he's going to try to keep as many questers questing.
And look at that Tipo.
Tipo's like, look, Mama, I quested for 1. And that gets you to 12. So he says, okay, I've done the math. The math's if you're in England. And
I'm going to win the game. Nuh-uh, yeah-huh, nuh-uh, yeah-huh.
Oh, let it go.
Oh.
So that is devastating. And then
and
I'm
a long
like,
way
why
to
not?
boot. Why not? And Cinderella is going to activate there at the end of the turn. We're going to ink a card, draw a card. And oh my goodness, what a turn.
Jinx, you owe me a boba. Just kidding, we already have them. So that was really great work because, I mean, at the end of the day, the Cobra is fine because you get to get 2 lore, but you have to discard the other card. That's the pain of a Cobra is you need a buddy, and that buddy is going to be discarded. So then you say, okay, well, can I wait 1 more turn? This is his second to last turn. He has 1 more chance to play, but basically Eric has to win the next turn or Trevor has to stop Eric from winning at this point and play out the cards. He inks the Giant Cobra and elects to go with Demona, which is a very, very big play to say, I'm going to try to get what I can. I'm going to get 3 cards. Maybe my next turn's it because, I mean, that's 2 lore on the board, but that's not enough to deal. I mean, I'm not going to even count, all right? Eric has enough to win on his side.
Yeah, and again, if Trevor could draw this out, if Trevor could prevent Eric from winning, it would be a draw, but it's not. There's the handshake, and Eric's going to win on the last possible turn, on the last possible moment in this match. It is in turns. It is his last turn. And,
incredible.
What a match.
That was a wild match. I'm sorry. You can't name your team Wyld and expect. I mean, if you're Maelstrom, I'm saying Maelstrom. If you're Wyld, I'm saying Wyld. And no, this is not to say anything to Trevor because Trevor managed. I mean, he was like a stalwart captain on a ship.
Great game by Trevor.
So we're going to head back to the booth here. You guys can see that we